5 random devs create a game based off the theme Floppy Night. But there's a twist. Each new developer joins the growing team and can communicate with everyone who came before. But once you pass on the project, you are permanently locked out of development. Let's jump right into the action with dev number 1.
Yo, what's up guys, it's WildRot, and somehow I got picked to go first. Damn. Lazy T gave me the theme Floppy Night, and with all the hype around Hollow Knight Silksong, my challenge was basically to make a floppy version of it. But let's be real, there's no way I'm recreating Hollow Knight in just a few days, so instead I just winged it to see where it would take me. So the first thing I did was hop into Unreal, set it up in a top-down perspective, and started messing around with the player. I thought, what animal could be floppy? And then it hit me. Axolotls. So I modeled this axolotl knight, slapped some armor on him, dropped him into the game. And yes, he's bald for now, don't worry, he won't stay like this. Next up, physics. And oh man, Unreal's physics can get pretty janky. I had to tweak and test until the active ragdoll felt just right. Once I had that working, I added some animations and boom, we got ourselves a floppy axolotl knight. At this point, I decided to shift the game into more of an arena wave fighter, kind of like Gang Beasts. So I added mouse-controlled hand movement and the ability to grab things. Then I threw in weapons. Well, a weapon, singular. I didn't have time to mess with balancing tons of physics weapons, so I went with a chain mace. Now you can smack enemies around floppy style. The enemies felt too static, so I quickly coded them to push you, and with the little time left, I hacked together a very broken wave system. But hey, it works. And that's what I managed to build for my part of the challenge. Honestly, I'm pretty happy with how floppy the player turned out. And if you want to see more of my stuff, make sure to check out my channel. Big thanks to Lazy T for bringing me here, and I can't wait to see what the other devs cook up next. I'll catch y'all later.
Hey, I'm NerdChomp. The last time I took part in one of these challenges, it was my first time using Unity, and I felt very limited in what I could contribute to the game, since I didn't really know how to navigate or use the engine. But now I'm back at home in Unreal. I opened the project to find this cute little axolotl in a suit of armor, with ragdoll mechanics and physics-based movement. Very fitting for the Floppy Night theme. I've never worked with ragdolls or physics-based movement in Unreal, but WildRot did all the hard work and already set that up for me. The mechanics were there, now I just needed to add the gameplay loop. The first thing I did was add a menu system, so there was an easy way to navigate and exit the game. In crafting the main menu, I realized there was no title for the game. I guess that's my job. The character is an axolotl who flops around a lot, so what better name to give him than Flopsolotl? He's a knight, so that's Sir Flopsolotl. Perfect. It took a while to set up, but eventually I got the character's floppiness working in the menu as well, so his head and body turned to follow the mouse. I added sliders for volume control, and I took this little teaching area that WildRot made for me and called it a tutorial. With the menu done, I got to the main part of the game. WildRot had created this arena where waves of enemy axolotls spawn and you hit them into the water to defeat them. He had a counter adding up for every enemy you defeat. I decided to break up the game into stages, each with their own set amount of waves. I switched the counter around so it counts down instead of up, telling you how many enemies are left in the stage. And once you complete the stage, it moves on to the next one. I streamlined the process for creating stages, automating some things, creating more easily controlled spawn points, and making drop-down menus for what gets spawned. I set up 10 stages to win, each with increasing difficulty. Next, I wanted to make it look a little less prototypey. I replaced all the blockout geometry with my own. I created some grass and went for a more stylized, shadeless grass look. I used a combination of world position offset in the shader and a global noise texture for the color to make it look like the grass is moving. I applied the same noise to the ground material, and this is the result. For the walls, I thought this stone material fit well. For the lighting, I used an HDRI, and I modified the color of the default sky to match the colors a bit better. Since axolotls are amphibious, I thought it was strange that water would hurt them. So I turned the water shader purple, added some fizz particles, and called it poison instead. Next, I added sounds. I'm not a musician, so I grabbed some royalty-free music for things like the menu music and the arena music. I also pulled this crowd stomping noise and augmented it so it swells up as you enter the arena. For other sounds like impacts and axolotl noises, I recorded my own stuff. For impacts, I combined the sounds of me hitting my palms together and me crumpling a paper bag. For the axolotls, I made silly little grunt noises with my mouth and pitched it up. I also recorded some seltzer water fizzing for when enemies get thrown into the poison. There was only one weapon in the game when I got it, this chain mace. I wanted to add another. Fitting in with the floppy theme, I made this floppy spear. It took a while to get the physics working properly. It kept clipping through the floor and walls. To fix this, I added blocking volumes to reinforce the collision. With multiple weapons, I thought it was a good idea to have a weapon gallery at the starting area before the player enters the arena. Here, they can choose which weapons to bring into battle. I made this weapon wall actor that lets you easily add a weapon slot to the wall and choose which weapon is placed. Right now, there are only 2, but I left room for more weapon types to be added. There needs to be a reason to choose different weapons, so I added this text on the gate telling the player what types of enemies they're about to face. If there's an enemy that's weak against a spear, the player can choose to take the spear. I'm hoping the enemy and weapon variety grows in the future to make this decision more meaningful. I had a crowd sound effect, but I had no crowd, so I created bleachers surrounding the stadium and an actor that spawns NPCs on those bleachers. I randomized their movements with a combination of sine waves feeding into a blend space in their animation blueprint. These are all skeletal meshes, and I couldn't tell how much it hurt performance. It runs fine on my machine, but my computer's pretty beefy, so I added an option to turn off the crowd if it does cause performance issues for lower NPCs. For testing purposes, I made this little playground area where I could test the spear weapon I added. I ended up making this its own mode, where players can experiment, practice, and play around with different weapons. For playground mode, I give the player the ability to toggle on and off the enemy AI. At this point, I still had more time, so I decided to add a third endless mode. This would only have one stage, with an infinite number of waves until the player loses. I switched the counter to count up again so players can compete for high scores. One additional enemy spawns every wave, increasing the difficulty as you go. Enemy types spawn based on weighted randomness. I assign these big guys a much lower chance of spawning, but as the waves progress, that spawn weight increases, making more big guys spawn the further you get. The last couple things I changed were the camera and in-air control. The camera would follow the player as they jumped, but from this perspective, it's kind of pointless and doesn't help the gameplay. So I locked the camera's Z position so it stays put when you jump. I also found myself trying to push the character away from edges when I was ragdolling, but there's no feedback for this, which was frustrating. So I gave the player a little bit of directional control while they're ragdolling. Not too much. I didn't want it to be super easy to avoid the poison, but just enough to make the player feel like they can try to avoid it. And that's when I ran out of time. I'm very happy with how this game is turning out. When I first received the game, it was a solid proof of concept. Now that the main loop is more developed, I think it's a solid 7 out of 10. With more added weapon and enemy variety, I think we could push it up to an 8 or a 9. I'm excited to see where the next dev takes Sir Flopsolotl.
Hello, I'm Hayes. I checked out what was made so far and it was very cute, but first thing I noticed is we can enhance the visuals to match with our little axolotl. With them being amphibians, I figured it would match pretty well to put them in a more tropical environment, so I added these 3 asset packs to get some assets to work with. First up was the gameplay level. I really liked the Coliseum vibe it had. It reminded me of the scene in Black Panther with the audience sitting on the cliffs, so I took inspiration from that, making this small pocket area be surrounded by cliffs that the audience sat upon while you fought. Then of course I added all the different foliage, palm trees, and made the water purple to match with the previous poison look. After that, I went through the training, main menu, and tutorial level and added some set dressing there as well. Other than the environment, I felt the controls were a bit tedious trying to grab weapons or enemies, so I simplified it to just one button to grab and replaced the second grab input as a throw. I also added some game juice to the weapons, selling their impact a bit better with new sound effects and camera shakes. Lastly, I made the enemies have a slight randomized color, and then some back-end bug fixing and straightening up some code. That's all for me. Bye!
Hey all, I am Simulacrum Games, and this is my first time doing one of these Pass the Game style challenges. It served as a nice little break from my main project, and it's like Stormworks but guns. Nobody knows what that is. Space Engineers, but guns. Minecraft. People know Minecraft. Yeah, it's just like Minecraft, but fully simulated guns. I really need to think of an elevator pitch. Anyway, that's what I usually work on, but this week I took a little breather to help these guys beat down on some axolotls. The characters are definitely cute, but after messing around for a bit, I noticed that pretty much the only thing you need to do is spin in a circle and you'll win. And if you're a complete degenerate, you can just spam grab next to everyone before they can even hit you. So this got me thinking, maybe adding more enemy variety that requires you to be more purposeful with your weapon control might be a good improvement. I spent my first day updating the project from UE 5.2 to 5.6, which wasn't too bad and helped me learn my way around the project anyway. Then I ended up spending quite a bit of my time tuning the physics of the weapons and how our little guy can control them. And then it occurred to me, if his superpower is being floppy, what does it look like when he gets stronger? He should get floppier, right? So I implemented a power-up system that increases the weapon floppiness and flinging power as you level up. Then I noticed you can just grab the enemies and throw them in a hole, so I modified it to only allow picking them up after they've been knocked out, which gives you a better option for disposing of enemies quickly at the low floppy level. Then I realized I didn't have much time left to add a flying enemy like I wanted to, so I changed the base enemy to be these guys that lie on the ground. And I made night enemies more resistant to flinging, and made the big guys the heaviest. And I went around doing a little polishing here and there, and decided it would be cool if you could jump into the main game straight from the tutorial, and called it there. All in all, I think in terms of potential, the game is maybe a 7 out of 10. I'm not sure where you could take weapons, but I could see there being room to add a lot more enemy variety and combinations of enemies. Controls definitely still need to work. I'd like to see the weapons be a lot more precisely controllable, but the aesthetics are nice, and I really do like the idea of someone who gets floppier the more they power up. And that'll do it for me. See ya.
Sparkle, sparkle, sparkle.
You gotta get your weapons floppy, that's the goal. I think these types of games thrive on chaos. I think that like the physics aspect of it was a good way to go. Fits the floppy theme very well. And I was actually very excited that you got all the physics pretty much down. Oh, where did that, oh my god! What? Where did this floppy sphere come from?
I thought the project was pretty cute.
I would have made it a roguelite where you like unlock different weapons with points you get, something like that, yeah.
Like the controlling the character, right now I think it's a little difficult. I think the type of game that it is though, the gang beasts, like it's okay to be like a little bit wonky. Yes, Jesus.
I think the first thing I would do is speed it up, make it more fast, do more damage, kill the enemies instantly, maybe focus more on the vibe of it being some kind of coliseum.
Maybe more like variety in the arena, and definitely more enemy variety, I would say would be the most interesting thing. I don't know how many other weapons you could add, but I think you could add a lot of interesting enemies.
Recently, I've released a video talking about how I took my multiplayer game that I made in 1 week and recreated it in 24 hours. Now, I've never actually made a horror game before, nor have I touched multiplayer, so I was stressed. But what was the game actually about? Essentially, it's a little backrooms game. You're on level 77, which is a medieval-themed castle. Wandering around these liminal spaces, you have to find 3 keys to escape. Finding these keys and coming back to the spawn area unlocks the crown, and upon touching the crown, you are teleported out to a new level. Granted, it was never going to be that easy. There is a queen wandering these halls, and if it gets to you, well, you're dead. So if this seems like your cup of tea, click on the link on screen now and it'll take you to the full video. I hope to see you there.